Today we're going to talk about the pros and cons of wax versus deck pads. I'm Evan Netsch. So today we're going to dive into details of what works best for you, and is that going to be wax on your surfboard or a front traction pad? Lots of different people have different opinions. I actually ride both. So let's just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each and what might work best for you. So front pad or wax, that is the big question. And honestly, I ride boards both ways, sometimes with the pad, sometimes with wax. And honestly, a lot of times it's just because the board I have isn't set up with a pad, even though I want it, but maybe I'm too lazy to take the wax off, or I don't have another pad to put on the board. But often I actually want one or the other. So why would you want one versus the other? Wouldn't a deck pad always be better? Always have more grip? But the reality is, I think it really depends a lot on kind of the water, the water temperature, if you're wearing booties, and kind of what's in the water. So I've actually noticed, I would say in general, a pad is more consistent. It's less maintenance. It's always going to be there. You're always going to have a good degree of grip. It works well. It's maybe a little bit more comfortable on your feet, and obviously you don't have to maintain it. You're not going to get sand in your wax. You can leave it in the sun. It's not going to melt like wax. I mean, wax is honestly a complete nightmare. So if you want something high maintenance, something that you have to deal with, you have to clean, sand gets stuck to it, that is wax. Pad is just much lower maintenance. And right now you're probably thinking, well, who would want wax at all? Why would you ever want wax? And I'll go into that in a second. But the other nice thing to consider about a pad is, I mentioned a minute ago, what's in the water. And this is yet another strike against wax, is I've noticed sometimes, especially here on the East Coast, an onshore wind in that sea foam, it's almost like you get a little bit of this like slimy algae stuff. I don't know what it is. Maybe just microorganisms, maybe just that salt foam itself. But a layer of that on wax, I find, just ruins your wax. You can have the nicest, grippiest wax job ever. You get some whitewater foam on it, and it's just ruined. So often I'll actually ride with a spare piece of wax in my pocket or tucked in my wetsuit, and I'll have to reapply a surface layer of wax while I'm out in the water. And I'd say whenever I do that, I'm kind of wishing I had a pad. I just don't happen to have a pad on the board that I'm using that day. So right now, pads are winning. Sounds like they're low maintenance, they've got good grip, they don't have issues with, wax melting, with the wax getting slippery with weird sea foam. So why would you ever use wax? For myself, I find that one, if I'm wearing wetsuit booties, I get a much better bond to wax. So in really cold water with wetsuit booties, wax is the winner for me. Booties have a little bit of thickness to it. Add it to the thickness of a pad on the board, I feel just a little more disconnected from the board, a little less, a little bit less control, and therefore I definitely 10 to 1 prefer wax with booties. So often I'll actually leave a board intentionally as a wintertime board for myself to use with booties, and I won't put a pad on it specifically for that reason. Also with wax, I find that a really good wax job is grippier than the pad. A bad wax job, of course, is horrible. So I feel like a pad is that consistent grip that is low maintenance, but wax has the potential to be really good and have a ton of grip. So if you can maintain your wax, you're in a consistent spot. You're always in the same cold water location or the same warm water location, and you don't mind maintaining that wax. You can keep your board out of the sun. Having a good wax job, I think, does actually offer you better grip in a lot of cases, more so than a pad. And then lastly, I'd say the big win for wax is, one, if you're ever surfing your board, you don't get that chafe from a deck pad. And two, you're just that much lower to the board. It's just a little bit more direct, maybe a little bit of a better connection with the board, and sometimes that feels better. So I would say, in general, I probably use pads 75% of the time. And I think in general, for most people kiteboarding, pads do make more sense. You're on your feet a lot. It actually protects your board a little more, gives your board a little more resistance to denting, to damage. When you're traveling with boards, you can stack them on top of each other. You're not going to get wax on the bottom of one board. The pads kind of pad just a little bit of cushion in between the boards. And also, you're always riding on your feet for a long time, and sometimes your heel can really migrate that wax around and make a big open spot where your heel goes and your wax gets kind of all globbed up. But wax does have its place, I think, especially with booties, and if you don't mind really maintaining it. So wax or a pad, completely personal preference, low maintenance, high maintenance, it's totally up to you. But those are some things I've noticed for why you would or would not use wax. So whatever suits you, make yourself happy, but that's my 2 cents on deck pads versus wax.